A $2 billion jackpot can flip a quiet life into a world almost no one recognizes. Edwin Castro went from anonymity to spending at a level that looks unreal even for Los Angeles. Mansions stacked across the city, cars that cost more than houses, security built like a private fortress. But here's a real question. How far does the spending go when the biggest Powerball winner in history stops holding back? Subscribe if you want more stories like this, because what comes next shows exactly what extreme wealth looks like up close. Edwin Castro walked into Bel Air with a $47 million estate that does not feel like a home so much as a statement. Reports describe an infinity pool stretching toward the Los Angeles skyline, blurring the water with the horizon until you cannot tell where the property ends and the city begins. Inside, a suspended glass walkway cuts across the second floor, hanging above open space like an architectural dare. 7 bedrooms sit spaced out like private suites, with 11 bathrooms arranged across hallways designed to feel more like an art gallery than a family residence. Every surface gleams. Every window angles toward a view that reminds you how high up the hillside you are standing. You move through the house and feel the shift. Your footsteps echo, the air sits still, and the silence has its own weight. Wealth that large changes the sound of a room. And somewhere inside all that space, a real question begins to form. When a home becomes this big, this perfect, this untouchable, does anyone truly relax inside it? His second property carries a different mood entirely. Reports place the price at more than $25 million, set high in the Hollywood Hills where the roads twist like threads around the cliffside. This house lives quietly in a neighborhood where many people know the feeling of being watched, followed, or photographed. The entire front opens in long sheets of glass, swallowing the canyon and the city lights in one wide frame. The angles are sharp, the rooms float above the slope, and the silence inside feels engineered. This is the kind of house that seems to breathe differently. At night it glows against the hill, a bright box hanging above the valley, a shape that looks like it should hum with electricity. People assume a place like this brings peace, but standing inside, you feel something closer to distance. It is beautiful, but it is isolated. And isolation can shift from comfort to pressure faster than most winners expect. Reports say many jackpot winners crave privacy the moment their names hit the news. This house feels like the physical version of that instinct, a retreat built not to entertain, but to protect. Then the tone shifts again with the purchase closest to his past. Reports say Edwin went back to Altadena and purchased a $4 million Japanese-inspired home for his parents. This space feels nothing like Bel Air or the hills. It breathes in softer rhythms. The details stay grounded, natural wood, open sight lines, sliding doors that guide light instead of blocking it. The home is shaped with balance in mind, not spectacle. A courtyard sits quietly in the center, surrounded by rooms meant to calm rather than impress. Giving a home like this to the people who raise you becomes more than generosity. It becomes a message. Maybe it is gratitude. Maybe it is protection. Maybe it is a bridge back to the version of himself that existed before the jackpot. And gifts this large carry their own kind of weight. When your life expands in every direction, the people closest to you can feel those shifts even more intensely. That is the part no headline covers. The invisible pressure that comes with giving. Every winner talks about the emotional ripple that moves through a family when money this big arrives. Some call it a blessing. Others call it fracture. But the truth sits somewhere in the middle, hard to name, harder to navigate. His garages tell a completely different story. Reports say his Porsche 911 GT2 RS sits in the center like a throne. $500,000 for a machine that pushes speed into territory most drivers never touch. Then comes the vintage Porsche 356, a piece of automotive history, restored with care. Collectors chase these cars for decades, hunting the ones with clean lines, original parts, and a kind of patina that only age can create. This lineup does not feel like impulse buying. It feels curated. This is a collection built by someone who knows the difference between a flashy purchase and a meaningful one. Each model says something different. Speed, legacy, engineering, identity. Cars like these become extensions of the person behind the wheel. They are not bought to be hidden. They are bought to be felt. Go deeper into collection, and the tone softens again. His Ram 1500 TRX sits parked with its own personality, aggressive, loud, heavy. The kind of truck that looks out of place until you remember who owns it. Near it sit 3 Volkswagen campers restored with almost nostalgic care. These vans do not brag. They tell stories. Road trips, family weekends, simpler years. The kind of memories wealth cannot buy or rebuild. And then the white Porsche from the 80s sits in its corner, a reminder that not everything he collects needs to be modern or extreme. Some things feel valuable because they survive time, not because they break records. This part of his garage feels personal. The deeper you go into his lifestyle, the clearer one thing becomes. Every choice pushes a story further from the world he came from. And the next decision showed just how far that distance really stretches. The spending shifts again once you look past the houses and the cars. Reports say Edwin began commissioning custom pieces, objects built by designers who specialize in one-off creations. These are not items you pick off a shelf. They start as sketches on a studio table, turn into prototypes molded by hand, and end as pieces no one else on Earth can own. Some are gadgets crafted with precision electronics, designed to respond only to him. Others are luxury art pieces forged in small workshops where the waiting list stretches for years. When someone holds billions, even time bends. Things other people wait a decade to receive arrive in months. These custom builds do not scream wealth. They whisper it. The quiet kind that hides behind closed doors in private rooms where only invited guests ever step. That is a strange part about money this big. Sometimes the loudest purchases are the ones you never see. Security, however, is impossible to hide. Reports say his properties operate more like controlled zones than households. Guards rotate in teams around the clock, moving with a level of alertness closer to tactical response units than residential staff. High-resolution cameras sweep the property lines, tracking movement with pan-tilt-zoom lenses that capture every shift of light on the lawn. The alarm system runs on layered circuits with a backup power grid in case the main one fails. Entry points are reinforced, access pathways restricted, and every door can seal itself with steel cores hidden inside the frames. The technology links straight to his phone, giving him control over locks, lighting, climate, and perimeter alerts from anywhere in the world. When you reach a level of wealth that attracts lawsuits, scams, and threats, safety stops being an upgrade. It becomes an entirely different way of living. People imagine luxury as comfort, but for winners this large, it often means learning to adjust to a life built behind invisible walls. Inside the homes themselves, the extravagance keeps unfolding. Reports mention entire rooms dedicated to experiences most people only see in high-end hotels, a champagne tasting room lined with chilled shelving, a private theater with reclining seats arranged like a miniature cinema, and living spaces that merge with outdoor patios through sliding panels that disappear into the walls. The architecture blurs the boundaries between inside and out so cleanly that it feels staged, like a set designed for a lifestyle commercial. Pools stretch toward skylines. Fire features glow along stone pathways. Outdoor dining areas sit under lighting rigs meant to cast a warm glow on late-night gatherings. These spaces look effortless, but anyone who has lived in a house knows the truth. Nothing this perfect takes care of itself. Every surface, every system, every landscape detail requires constant attention. Luxury is not still. It moves, it shifts, it demands. And part of the cost is letting your environment become something that always needs watching. Then you reach the part of the story that turned heads for a different reason. Reports say he directed $156 million toward California's public education system. The announcement made headlines, and officials praised the contribution as a victory for schools that have battled budget shortages for decades. Supporters called it generous, meaningful, even transformative. Critics, however, describe it in a different tone, pointing out that the scale of the donation looks different when the giver holds billions. To some, it was charity. To others, public relations. The debate itself tells you something about extreme wealth. It turns every gesture into a spectacle. People admire it or question it, celebrate it or dissect it, and rarely see the human behind the number. For Castro, the donation may have been sincere, strategic, or both, but the reaction around him pulled the moment into a spotlight he could not control. Attention only grew louder when his personal life entered the conversation. Reports say he began spending time with Peyton Vincent, a writer and model whose presence in Hollywood circles had already caught social media's interest. Their appearances together started in luxury spaces, Fashion events, high-end restaurants, coastal breakfast spots that paparazzi watch from across the street. Cameras caught them leaning close, talking quietly, laughing in ways that fed rumor mills for weeks. Peyton's life shifted quickly, too. Her social media following climbed, her visibility jumped, and her daily surroundings transformed from coffee shops and bank counters to hillside views and red carpet invitations. Their relationship became another chapter in the story people wanted to read, not because of who they are, but because of what the jackpot made possible. That is a part no one prepares for. When life becomes public, even the personal feels staged. Wealth on this scale brings a cost most people never think about: maintenance. Reports say the list of specialists involved in keeping his lifestyle running looks more like the staff roster of a boutique hotel than a private home. Landscapers shape the grounds every morning, trimming edges that must stay perfect under the Los Angeles sun. Pool technicians maintain chemical levels so the water stays crystal clear for infinity-edge views. Smart home engineers monitor systems that run lighting, climate, locking mechanisms, and automated shades across multiple estates. Car experts rotate through garages to tune engines, detail finishes, and preserve original parts on vintage models that need consistent care to stay museum grade. Housekeepers and property managers move through rooms bigger than entire apartments, maintaining surfaces, inventories, and security protocols. When people imagine luxury, they often forget that every polished detail requires a team. Wealth this massive does not sit still. It expands, it grows, and it pulls a full support system along with it. The attention surrounding him never really settled down. Reports describe media vans parked near entrances, long lens cameras watching from across the street, and speculation stretching online into every corner of social conversation. Being the largest lottery winner in American history turned his daily routine into a spectacle. Every car he drove, every restaurant he visited, every person he stood next to, someone had a photo, a headline, or a theory ready to publish. The feeling is not excitement. It is surveillance stitched into everyday life. The world treats extreme wealth like entertainment, and the person at the center becomes a storyline instead of a human being. That pressure shifts the way you move, the way you choose where to go, the way you speak in public. Privacy stops being something you have. It becomes something you chase. The financial pressure goes deeper than the headlines. Reports say scammers and opportunists follow mega winners closely, tracking their purchases, their public records, their property filings, and their vulnerabilities. Some approach as investors, offering deals that collapse under scrutiny. Others appear as legal threats: letters, claims, accusations, fraudulent stories crafted to force settlements. Even small missteps can turn into high-stakes conflicts when billions are attached to your name. Wealth draws attention, but it also draws risk. It changes the tone of every interaction, the trust behind every handshake, and the caution behind every decision. Experts who study jackpot winners warn that sudden wealth creates more exposure than safety. It attracts people who want to be close, not out of respect, but out of expectation. The shift from a regular routine to billionaire level living brings its own kind of emotional whiplash. Before the win, life had structure, work hours, habits, familiar faces, and predictable days. After the win, everything expands at once. Choices multiply until they feel infinite, and that freedom can be overwhelming. Reports from psychologists who study sudden wealth say this jump creates a psychological split. The world you came from and the world you fell into rarely match, and navigating between them takes more than money. Your social circle changes. Your daily rhythm changes. Even the way strangers look at you changes. And underneath it all, there's a silent challenge of rebuilding identity after your old life drops away overnight. In Edwin Castro's case, the story reveals how money can stretch a life in directions it never expected to go. Astonishing, overwhelming, glamorous, stressful, and sometimes all at once. The jackpot gave him access to things most people will never see, but it also placed him under a spotlight that never turns off. And that contrast created a question that lingers long after the celebrations end. How much of a life does a person keep when the world changes as fast? Wealth this big created a life most people never see. Beautiful on the surface, complicated underneath, and constantly shifting between privilege and pressure. The world calls it luck, but you decide what it really looks like. If you were handed a fortune this size tomorrow, what part of your life would change first? Hit subscribe and tell me your answer, because the next story might challenge it even more.